Welcome to Waking Up Tired, Narcolepsy Symptoms Explained, a limited podcast series giving voice to what narcolepsy symptoms are like from a patient's perspective. I'm Dice Spillane, and today we're exploring the one symptom that differs between narcolepsy type 1 and 2, cataplexy. Cataplexy is a sudden loss of muscle tone triggered by strong emotions. Anything from laughter to fear, surprise, or even love. Now, it can look like the person has fainted or they're having a seizure. But in fact, they're awake and fully aware of what's going on around them. They're just unable to move or perhaps even speak until the episode passes. Cataplexy has been the brunt of the joke in Hollywood depictions for years. But the reality is, there's actually nothing funny about having a cataplexy episode. For some, it's a momentary weakness in the knees or a drooping of the eyelids. And for others, it can be a full body collapse. Because cataplexy can vary so much from person to person, in this episode, we'll explore what cataplexy feels like and how it affects daily life through stories shared by two people who are living with narcolepsy with cataplexy. Our first guest is Andrew. Andrew's journey with narcolepsy began at the age of 18 during a boating holiday, where he experienced his first full-body cataplexy episode. It frightened him so much that he actually thought he had a brain tumour. Because his episode was so extreme, his doctor was able to tell him straight away what he thought it was. So instead of waiting potentially years to be diagnosed, Andrew was actually diagnosed within a week of having that episode. Meet Andrew.
My name's Andrew. I first noticed something was wrong when I was 18 years old. My first symptoms of narcolepsy for me was a cataplexy attack while on holiday fishing. I had a bite on my rod and the excitement of the bite caused me to lose all my muscles and I flopped to the floor like a rag doll. I was one of the lucky ones. It took 2 weeks to find out why this was happening to me. It can take 15 years or more. I was 18 years old when I was told I'd got type 1 narcolepsy. I was on a boating holiday on the River Avon in England. We planned a 2-week holiday, which was actually to do a ring using the River Severn and the River Avon. You go in one direction, so you've only got so many days to do it. Done all the narrow locks. We'd done the big locks on the River Severn, which are all manned midweek, and we're on the River Avon. And we come to the first big lock, and my fiancée didn't like steering the boat. So she was doing the locks, but this particular day, she didn't realise that we'd gone from big locks that were manned, and this lock she got to do herself. She got really upset over it and said no, she wasn't going to do it. So we had a bit of an argument, and I had to turn the boat around, which was unplanned, and it meant I had to replan the whole schedule to get home because we'd virtually gone past the point of no return. Cruising back towards where we'd been moored on the morning, I was so upset that we wasn't going to do this full holiday. I got my fishing rods out, and I'm sat on the back deck of the boat and I'm fishing with a float and she's inside the cabin. I suddenly had a bite, the float went under, and as I went to strike to hook the fish, I just lost all the use of muscles and fell off my chair and collapsed on the deck. Within seconds, I've got back up, brushed myself off. She's come running onto the deck wondering what's going on. That was my first full-on cataplexic attack. For the rest of that week, I had weakness in my muscles whenever I was trying to throw the rope off the boat or the lock key for the other person to do the locks. Yeah, so once I had that first attack, that was it. It was there. I honestly thought it was a brain tumour. That was the only thing I could think of. I think within the first 12 months of being diagnosed with narcolepsy, which I was diagnosed literally a week after getting back off holiday. So we understood what was going on. I was having cataplexy attacks all the time, and now the sleeping was also a problem. That seemed to start up pretty soon after we got back off holiday. I was living in a flat with my fiancée, and we'd got 2 cats. She was having to bring me home from work because by this time I've now handed my driver's licence in. I couldn't drive. Every time we come home from work about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, our cats would be waiting at the door to come in. And one of the 2 cats, she was a stray we'd rescued, and she was tiny. She used to wait in the hedgerow on the opposite side of the road because there was no houses. And this one particular day, I got out of the car, my fiancée went into the flat, and this little cat come running across, all happy to see us. And suddenly from nowhere, this massive big tomcat, which we knew was around, he come out and he actually literally legged her up and dragged her back across the road into these hedgerows. And we could hear her literally screaming. And so I went and got a stick because I'm trying to get our cat back, and I'm already starting to feel the cataplexy come on. I managed to get her out anyway. As I was walking back and I've got her in my arms, and I turned around, this tomcat's actually following us. I couldn't believe it. And I was so upset. I had a full-on cataplexy attack right on the footpath outside the house, and I fell flat on my back on the path. I was there it was probably a couple of minutes, and somebody actually walked over me. That's the thing that really got me. Somebody actually walked over me, never even looked at me. They just thought maybe I was drunk, I think. And I think that was probably the first time I realised how it would look to other people. Cataplexy was an absolute nightmare. Probably within the first 2 years of having narcolepsy, they put me on imipramine for the cataplexy, and I was on dexamphetamines. We went on a holiday to the Isle of Wight. I already knew that I probably couldn't swim. I was scared of the thought of swimming and having a cataplexy attack. There was 4 of us on holiday, and somebody came up with the idea of, well, why don't you get one of them inflatable bed? You can just sit on that. So I've got this inflatable bed. I've gone out off the beach onto the water. It was a beautiful day. I was quite happy there watching the other 3 swim until my best mate decided to get onto the inflatable with me, and he's a big guy. And as he jumped on the front, I rolled off the side and had a full-blown cataplexic attack. I just sunk to the bottom. I mean, it wasn't very deep. It was deep enough to drown. I was gone. He luckily realised what was going on, and he literally grabbed me and lifted me up out of the water and got me to the beach. Very scary. When I did go to the docks, I must have been saying I was getting tired and this thing about muscles. He just clicked straight away. He got the big black book out, as they would in them days. And he says, yes, he said, I think you've got narcolepsy. I went, what is narcolepsy? Nobody had ever heard of narcolepsy back then. So I must have already been getting tired on the boat. And I know, looking back, hindsight, there was a few weeks before we went away on the boat. I was doing artwork for a printing company, and by about 3 p.m, I was getting really tired. But I was 18. I was clubbing most nights. He recommended that we went private to see a neurosurgeon. There was no sleep specialist. He wanted to do an EEG. He said, don't be surprised if it shows up that you've got epilepsy. So I went back for the results. I knew I had to hand my driver's licence in. That was understandable. Epilepsy and driving, no chance. I did go, we had regular visits, which I went always with my dad, which was always a bit awkward because he was a big worrier. Didn't understand why and what was causing the narcolepsy. I didn't know whether I'd had 3 really good bangs to the head over the years. Was it that? He would have been the one who put me on the dexamphetamines and the imipramine, which apparently was just a fluke. They was trying imipramine out for something else because it's just an antidepressant. They found it was working on this guy with narcolepsy. And I'm still on that now. So that's a long time ago and it still works really well. There was nothing, and there was no sleep studies. So there was no study on, what was happening over night time or anything. No, so it was all just based on this EEG that I did. I was very ignorant, I think. I never met anybody else with narcolepsy. And I think because a few years later I needed a heart transplant, the transplant side took over my life. In fact, I never actually spoke with anybody else with narcolepsy till we moved here in 2015. So that's like 30 odd years later. So no, I never really looked into it. We heard little bits here and there about certain things in the brain, but I just got on with it. And now I realise there's certain things that was going on which I didn't even realise was connected with narcolepsy, the dreaming and stuff. I was just dealing with all of that on my own. I've learned more information since I joined the Living with Narcolepsy in Australia group. I really didn't know anything until joining this group. It's been fantastic for me, to be honest. I didn't know about type 1 narcolepsy. I just knew it was narcolepsy and cataplexy. I never even heard that till I joined this group. And some of the things that and that's when you go, oh my God, I've had that too. But I've never had anybody to share that with, to compare to like relationships and problems with relationships and that. You think back, you think, oh my God, my relationships, they were train wrecks. Donna is so incredible. She's been so understanding, and I feel so guilty sometimes because, it affects her sleep and everything with me. I thought, oh, it's awful. I really don't know how she's coped. And then with the transplants as well. But the narcolepsy has always been the big problem. So it's been absolutely enlightening, honestly. It's brilliant. It's the only time you really feel normal when you're with a group of other people that actually totally understand. Otherwise, how can anybody understand if you've never actually experienced it? I had to do a cataplexy video for my sleep specialist because she admitted, she said, I've never actually seen a cataplexic attack. I said, oh my God, really? I said, I can do that for you. I said, I know exactly how to do that. I said, I'll just go and play on the games console with my son. I said, because when it gets competitive, I'll just go, lose everything.
Thank you, Andrew. Our second guest today is Elsie. Elsie's experience with cataplexy began much earlier, around the age of 8. But despite this, it took nearly 7 years to get a diagnosis. You see, her symptoms at first were subtle, buckling knees and facial droops, but they went on to become much more severe. Despite her mum's early instincts that something wasn't right, Elsie faced years of being told that there was nothing wrong with her. It wasn't until she took matters into her own hands and did some research that she came up with the answer. Meet Elsie.
Hi, my name is Elsie. I started having symptoms of cataplexy around the age of 8 when I laughed. Everyone around me just thought I had a funny laugh. I was experiencing facial drooping at that age. As I got older, around the age of 10, I started experiencing knee buckling. It took me until I was 15 to find out I had Narcolepsy Type 1. My mum had always thought I might have narcolepsy from a young age. When I was 3, she took me to the doctors to get tested. She was told, don't be silly, she's just a child that's tired. She then went back again at the age of 5 and was told, children don't have narcolepsy. When I was around the age of 10 onwards, my symptoms slowly got worse, including full body collapsing when laughing, more often sleep attacks, brain fog, and more. We went to go see the doctors again. My sleepiness and knee buckling was getting worse. The doctors ran lots of tests like iron levels, thyroid, diabetes, celiac disease, and then they also checked my hips and my back. The doctor said I was fine, but I wasn't fine. I was still experiencing all this stuff. I would often be falling asleep in classes, car rides, and public transport, and it was just not good. The school called my parents in for a meeting and asked them what time I was going to bed, as they were concerned if I was having late nights. My parents couldn't think of any reason why I was falling asleep at school. When I would fall asleep in class, I had teachers telling me off, and this was really embarrassing, and that slowly made me realize that this wasn't normal. My cataplexy became more noticeable at the age of 13 onwards. It started with laughter being the main trigger. I remember once I was at school and me and my friends were playing this really funny game, and I started laughing and I had a cataplexy attack. Everyone around me was looking at me weirdly and was really confused. It was really hard to get out of, and my friends had to end up trying to get the teacher's attention. When the teacher came over, he didn't know what to do, and I slowly got out of it. Then I asked to go to the front office. I wasn't fully sure what it was at this time. I was still waiting to do my sleep study. I had a rough idea of what it could have been, but it was really confusing for me. By the age of 15, I decided to do my own research and take it into my own hands. And it came up with cataplexy. And then I also saw that cataplexy normally comes with narcolepsy. I told my mum and she said that's what she always thought I could have had. So we went back to the doctor and asked for a test again. This time we had an amazing doctor who agreed and sent us to go see a sleep specialist. The sleep specialist then referred us for a sleep study, and that's how I got my diagnosis. I did an overnight test and then the sleep latency tests. And once I got my results, the specialist said I was textbook narcoleptic. And when I described my cataplexy symptoms to her, she said, yeah, you definitely have type 1 narcolepsy. I don't go to school anymore, but when I went to that school, they were really good, and I actually didn't have to go to school for the full day because I was falling asleep. Specialist subjects like art and stuff, I would be able to go home then and then only do the main subjects because it was dragging out the day and it was really long and I'd be falling asleep and missing out on education. So yeah, they were really good with that. I didn't ever take naps at school or anything. I was just a bit embarrassed to go. I remember one of my cataplexy attacks happened when I was out at a restaurant with my friends and my sisters. We had just finished our dinner and we'd walked out and everyone was taking some photos. And I had ordered a Caesar salad and it was a joke because it came out and it wasn't exactly what I liked and it was just a funny joke. And when we were taking the photos, one of the people said, "Caesar salad," and I found it really funny, started laughing and completely fell down to the floor and everyone was like, "Whoa, what is going on?" I banged my head, but I was okay. One of the restaurant people came out and said, "Are you okay?" And then it was even funny because the person that said it was my sister's boyfriend, and he was quite new to the family at that time. And he wasn't 100% sure what it was. He thought it was epilepsy. So then I heard him say, "Oh, she's okay. She just has epilepsy." So then I was slowly coming out of the cataplexy attack and went back down again because it was really funny. That is a memory I will always have. It was really funny, but I did hurt myself that day. Cataplexy for me has slowly gotten worse, and I found that if I'm more tired, it can be more intense. The other day I was at the shops and I finally found what I was looking for. Even though this was the slightest emotion, I still felt my knees buckle and my muscles get weak. I was prescribed the dexamphetamines and it really did not work well for me. Basically experienced every side effect. I had a really bad experience. They did then say about modafinil, but me and my mum weren't too keen on it. I'm going to see a new sleep specialist soon. When we see him, maybe we'll think about taking other medications. I just really try my best. I do scheduled naps and stuff like that.
Thank you so much to Andrew and Elsie for sharing their stories today. Andrew's experience reminds us how sudden and physically dangerous cataplexy can be and what it might look like to other people. His journey also shows how long it can take to find a community of people who can support you, people who understand what you're going through. Elsie's story introduces us to the world of childhood narcolepsy, the confusion, the embarrassment, and the strength it takes to keep pushing for answers. Her ability to self-advocate and her reflections on how cataplexy has shaped her life are a powerful reminder that early diagnosis and support matter deeply. If you or someone you know is experiencing symptoms like sudden muscle weakness, please speak to your doctor. And if you're already living with narcolepsy, you're not alone. The narcolepsy community is here to help you. The Waking Up Tired podcast exists to raise awareness, foster understanding, and help others to find the diagnosis and support they deserve, sooner, not later. Join us next time as we continue exploring narcolepsy through real voices and lived experiences. Thanks for listening to Waking Up Tired.